The judge is ready? And the timer? All right. At the beginning of my opponent's speech, she brought up a piece of evidence about this lady who actually went to the U.S. and participated in the FLEX program, and then how she went back to Russia and that she was able to help out children with disabilities. However, nowhere in this piece of evidence did she mention democracy, which is actually the real crux of their case. The whole point of them sending the students from Russia to the FLEX program in America is so that they can learn democracy. This lady learned how to help children with disabilities. While that is all good and nice, the whole point of their case is to have the students learn about democracy, not about helping children with disabilities. Now today in my speech, I will be bringing up the disadvantage of hypocrisy, and then I will be addressing my partner's arguments. First of all, what this disadvantage basically is that the U.S. is actually being hypocritical by only inviting Russian students to come over and increasing the funding toward Russia, while other countries actually have a worse democracy and more of a democratic need. Here is my first link. Link 1 is that the affirmative increases funding only to Russia out of all of the countries in the FLEX program. Link 2 is that out of the countries of FLEX, Russia plus 9 more. This is from the U.S. Department of State. They said in 2010, quote, "The Future Leaders of Exchange Program, or the FLEX program, gives students from the following countries: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Ukraine." These are 9 countries, and Russia is only one out of the 9 countries. Now, also another link, and also could be called a break, is that many of the other countries in the FLEX program have a democracy problem. This is my break 1, is that Belarus, Russia, and Moldova have turned to authoritarian regimes after the Cold War. This is from Nevsky. He said in 2006, quote, "Hybrid regimes follow diverse trajectories during the post-Cold War period. Although some of them democratized Ghana, Mexico, Slovakia, and Taiwan, most did not. In many cases, regimes either remained stable or became increasingly authoritarian, like Belarus, Cambodia, Russia, and Zimbabwe. In still other cases, autocrats fell but were replaced by new autocrats. In Albania, Macedonia, Madagascar, and Moldova, regimes experienced 2 or more transitions without democratizing." And this is our second break, is that the U.S. cannot ignore the post-Soviet Union. The U.S. and Russian relations should not be pursued at the expense of post-Soviet countries. This is from the Journal of International Affairs. They said in 2007 that, quote, "The United States also needs to give more consideration to how it can provide greater reassurance to the countries of Central and Eastern Europe. Better relations with Moscow should not be pursued at their expense or behind their back, but a reduction of tensions with Russia is in their interest. Indeed, they will be one of the primary beneficiaries from it." And the impact to this disadvantage is that of hypocrisy. Essentially, we as the U.S. are being hypocritical by only increasing the funding of the FLEX program to the Russian students, while other countries have much worse democratic problems. Such as, here's an example of China. This is from Open Democracy. They said in 2008 that, quote, "Western media categorizes China as a communist dictatorship. They stress her lamentable human rights records and the inhuman brutality of her rapid modernization. Russia, on the other hand, is treated at worst as a flawed democracy. Despite his provocative statements, Western leaders always maintain good relations with the former President Putin." So what this piece of evidence is basically saying is that the Western media are categorizing China as being a communist dictatorship, while they're categorizing Russia as being a flawed democracy. So essentially what this card is saying is that China is much more communist than Russia and has a much worse democracy. Essentially, we are being hypocritical by only increasing the funding for Russia and ignoring all of the other countries that have worse democracies, such as China. Now I will go on to address some points that my opponent brought up. She said that just because that this isn't a big problem doesn't mean that we should ignore it. Well, this is true, but Their plan is still not a policy or a course of action. Our standard to this topicality press was that they have to change a policy. This is part of the resolution that the United States federal government should significantly reform its policy toward Russia. Another standard was that a policy was a course of action. I asked Hannah and Crossex if a policy was a course of action, and she said yes, it was. They have agreed to this point. The violation was that the course of action is already happening. They did not refute this point. Also, they said that we never said that Russians hate us. However, in the 1AC, it says that Russia thinks that the U.S. influence is bad. This is actually quoting from their 1AC. It says, quote, a 2009 poll done by the Pew Global Attitudes Project found that in Russia, only 15% describe America's influence as good, and 62% say it is bad. This piece of evidence, Judge, is from that team. True, it does not say that Russians hate us. I do not believe that in our speech we said that Russians hate us either. But the whole point here is that Russians think that U.S.